In this video, I will explain how I reset my circadian clock in just 7 days. I was starting to feel really low energy, and my productivity and motivation for tasks had plummeted, lower than it had been probably since COVID, so about 4.5 to 5 years ago. And I just believed that it was that I'd lost interest in the work that I was doing. I'd lost my passion for it, perhaps. There's also, I've got 2 young kids. Perhaps they were draining my energy. I don't know. There were lots of different theories that I had. And then, completely by chance, I came across this book called The Circadian Code by Dr. Sachin Panda. And immediately, literally within the first 10 pages, I thought to myself, this could be the answer to the problem that I've been having. There were also some mentions in here to how when our circadian clock gets messed up, and I'll explain in a minute what the circadian clock is and how it can get messed up, but when it can get messed up, not only do we feel very low energy, not only do we lose our motivation and productivity, but it can also lead to chronic diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and even cancers. So over the last month, I've been working on resetting my circadian clock, and I just feel so much better. And in fact, the motivation to even create this video for YouTube, something I've been putting off for so long, has only come about because I've been able to reset this clock. Okay, so you might have heard of something called the circadian rhythm before. The circadian clock is basically something that's inside of us, in our brain, in our organs, that's telling us when to eat, when to sleep, when to exercise, and a few other things, but they're the most important. When do we eat? When do we exercise? And very, very, very importantly, when do we go to sleep? And how do we cultivate an environment that makes sleep easy? Okay. I'm not coming across here as an expert. I'm not an expert on this. All I'm doing is I'm showing you exactly what's worked for me, and it has worked better than almost anything I've tried in a long time. So here's how I fixed it. Firstly, I started wearing a Whoop band. I've been wearing that for about 2 or 3 months. That I happened to start wearing that before I even found out about this book. However, very, very important, because Whoop is telling me things like the exact time I fall asleep, how successful I am during sleep, how many times I wake up, how deep into sleep I get, and then it tells me the exact time that I wake up in the morning. So what I started to do is I started to take a chart. I started to chart when I fell asleep. So every single night over 7 days, and when I woke up for every single morning over 7 days. And I could see that if there was a 1 to 2 hour discrepancy, so let's say I went to sleep at 8 p.m. one night, but went to sleep at 10:15 p.m. the next night, there's a huge problem there. There's a big difference in my clock of when I should and shouldn't be falling asleep. So over the course of 7 days, I worked out where the problems were. Was I eating at the same time every day? Was I falling asleep at the same time every day? Am I waking up at the same time every day? The answer was no. It was all over the place, particularly with eating way too late, and then really struggling to fall asleep. Because what we need to do is have a 3-hour gap between the last bite of food that we take in an evening and the time that we fall asleep. 3-hour gap. Once I introduced this 3-hour gap, I was falling to sleep very easily. I was staying asleep because my body wasn't digesting the food or producing the acids that are required to digest the food. And then I was waking up in the morning feeling, 1, very refreshed, 2, ready to eat again. And that was something that I'd not felt in a long time. I actually started doing things like fasting from 12, so not eating until lunchtime, and then eating all the way to 8 p.m. And that did have some benefits. However, it wasn't helping my sleep. And that lack of sleep, or that poor quality sleep, was leading to a real challenge with motivation, productivity, and energy. My energy levels were just so unbelievably low. Okay. When I fix this, it is literally night and day, the way that I feel. So if you are interested in fixing your circadian clock, which if you're feeling like you have low energy, your motivation has dropped, your productivity has dropped, there's a very, very good chance that your circadian clock is out of sync. So obviously I'd recommend buying and reading the book, The Circadian Code. But if you wanted to get started right now, take a chart and just write down what time you fell asleep, what time you woke up, what time you took your last bite of a meal, what time you took your first bite of a meal, and what time you exercise. If you just track that for a week, if it happens to be that you are doing all those things at the same time every single day, then your circadian clock is probably in sync, although could perhaps do with some shifting around. If those are changing all the time, that is clear evidence that your circadian clock is a mess. And the simplest way to fix that is to, one by one, sleep. Well, I wouldn't recommend starting with sleep. So starting with diet, so when you eat. It's one of the easiest ways to change this. So I am now eating at 8 a.m., and I do not eat any later than 6 p.m. So that's eating within a 10-hour window, and then leaving 3 hours before I fall asleep at night. And this is helping me fall into the deepest sleep that I've had in a long, long time. So if you are suffering from low energy, struggling with productivity and motivation, there is a good chance that your circadian clock is out of sync. So if you take the chart that I mentioned in this video, and then correct those things if they're out of sync, like making sure that you eat at the same time every day, exercise at the same time every day, and go to sleep at the same time every day, then your circadian clock will, in time, over the course of just a few days, start to get back into sync, and you will start to feel that you have more energy, more motivation and productivity. Good luck.